Welcome back with our main topic today. We're discussing today that Egypt is hosting today the summit on Sudan's neighboring states in order to seek a settlement to the current conflict in Sudan, and it stems from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's keenness to solve the conflict that is taking place in Sudan. Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have this phone with Dr. Hassan Waguih, Professor of Political Science. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Well, Dr. Waguih, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was always keen to put an end or to find a solution for the conflict taking place in Sudan, and that is very clear as today Egypt is hosting the summit of Sudan neighboring countries. So give us an idea about the importance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's keenness to put a solution for the crisis.
Yes, it is very important that Egypt is now intervening with great peace efforts to avoid the worst-case scenario in Sudan. When you have the two conflicting parties, no one is having the upper hand. This could call for foreign intervention, proxy wars, and the president and the Egyptian leadership and the Egyptian diplomacy is so keen to prevent this scenario from escalating. And instead, Egypt leadership is keen to make a harmonizing scenario that would take into account all the scenarios, all the initiatives. Most of the initiatives are focusing on putting ceasefire into effect. But Egypt is trying to address in this conference with all these neighboring countries, with all these collective initiatives, to harmonize all these collective agendas and to address the root of the conflict in Sudan, not only to have a route for humanitarian help as the United Nations tried to do, etc., etc.
Yes, Dr. Waguih, the role played by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and it is going to be very clear today in the conference. Yes.
Yes, of course. As I've already mentioned, Egypt is keen to launch the best-case scenario and to avoid the worst-case scenario.
Yes.
And this is a great work. This needs a great complex diplomacy with concerted efforts. So it's a great success that Egypt was capable of inviting all the neighboring delegates, because this needs, the Sudan situation needs collective efforts. You know, a few days ago we had the IGAD quartet, and they launched an initiative. And you had the Saudi Arabia and America have another initiative. Egypt and Sudan, South Sudan, launched an agenda. Europe is so keen about the situation too. So Egypt is the Egyptian diplomacy here has a task of synchronizing, of harmonizing all these initiatives and try to avoid all the negative scenarios that could emerge in the land of Sudan. Hopefully not, inshallah, with positive efforts exerted in this conference, collective effort.
Yes. So, Dr. Waguih, can we say that the conference today, which is the conference on Sudan for the neighboring countries, is a kind or a step helping in the fulfilling the means of putting an end or settling the situation in Sudan in order to save the lives of the Sudanese civilians who are really suffering? Because recently there was, for example, a random shooting in a market in Sudan. So tell us about this point, please. The means of solving the means.
When we listen to the news about this civilian loss and terrible economic situation that's taking place and exacerbating the situation further. I think, yes, there is a great humanitarian crisis in Sudan, killing of civilians. There are about 3 million people left to Sudan. Egypt opened its border. Chad opened its borders. All the neighboring countries are trying to help, but the greatest help should be the help of the factions and the powers in Sudan to cooperate together so as the end of the conflict, the bloody conflict that is not in the interest of this country at all and not in the interest of the neighboring countries, of course. So having this humanitarian problems is really sad situation, and I hope that it will not get more and more absurd.
Yes, actually, Egypt, what's your evaluation for the role of Egypt since the conflict have started 3 months ago? As Egypt at first, when the conflict erupted, Egypt have sent humanitarian supplies and really supported Sudan. And after this, Egypt opened its borders. Every 3 months ago, every day, there's a flow of Sudanese coming and entering from the borders of Sudan into Egypt, and Egypt is providing all the help, medical care, food, everything for the Sudanese. Tell us your insight concerning this point, please.
Yes, of course, Egypt has been opening its border now for almost, as the president once said, almost 10 million people from Libya, from Sudan, from Yemen, and lately we have like 250,000 people from Sudan because of the current events that took place.
Yes, and the number is expected
in
to
Egypt
rise.
These days.
And yes, the number is expected to rise.
Of course,
yes.
So long as the conflict is there,
yes.
the number, as you said, is nominated to increase, of course. But
yes.
Let us hope that with this conference, we will come up with the solution, the radical solution, a scenario that deals with the roots of the conflict in Sudan. It is not only to make only ceasefires and the humanitarian solution for the problem of the humanitarian crisis, but also to help the country stand again on its feet, build the country. Sudan is the richest with resources. All Africans should be keen to help Sudan because they are helping themselves. Africa needs to work in a united, orchestrated effort, and this is what the Egyptian leadership is keen to achieve today. And by the way, fair-minded analysts have already commended the Egyptian diplomacy with a great deal of patience and a great deal of help for the depths of Africa.
Yes, still in this point, Dr. Waguih, we're going to be back to the conference, but in this point, Dr. Waguih, I'd like to shed more light that Egypt actually, and under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, is receiving millions from several nations. As President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said 2 weeks ago, that Egypt is hosting more than 9 million of the citizens from countries who are suffering from conflicts like Syria, like Libya, like Yemen, and now like Sudan, and also from Somalia. what I would like that you shed light on, that Egypt is treating all the nationalities, the more than 9 million nationalities who are staying in Egypt like any normal citizen. And that was very clear, that they are not staying in camps, they are, or settlements. They are living as neighbors and sisters and brothers to the Egyptians. And also, it was clear that when President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have launched the 100 million health, yes, the initiative, they are not excluded, but they are included inside the initiatives, the health initiatives that are launched by the presidency. What's your comment on this? Hello?
Oh, yes.
Hello?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you have raised a very important question, and you have already answered the question. So my point is that to
No,
support
I would
your
like that you shed more light.
Yeah, more
Yes.
light. Of course, Egypt is very keen, and this is the nature of the Egyptian people, is to have people from all over the world with hospitality, with good intentions. This is history can attest to this fact. So I believe that we didn't have camps for the refugees as many countries do, and we are having people who are living among us, sharing us our life, sharing us our economy, and with great welcome. So this is the nature of the Egyptian people throughout history, long history of hospitality and rooming other people and showing brotherhood and sisterhood for them.
Yes, Dr. Waguih, concerning the summit of today that Egypt is hosting of Sudan's neighboring countries, how would the summit be a kind of coordination between the neighboring countries for the stability of the region?
Yes, I think there is a very big task waiting for the people who are gathering together in the summit, because the Sudanese crisis is so complicated. There is, for instance, people who are really keen about having the same kind of chaos. They would like chaos, like the ousted regime of al-Bashir and his people and his bloc, big number, wants chaos so as to avoid trials, and they wanted to have a comeback. So you have to work on this. You have tribal leadership in Sudan, and they have an agenda. You have people in Darfur, and there is an agenda. You have militias. The army has to unify all those factions under its leadership, because there should be one army. You will never be successful in this world if you have two armies in the same country. As we did, the result is terrible. So I think Egypt is very keen about this, and trying to put on the table all the complexities of the situation. And when you do that, of course, you can assign tasks for all the neighboring countries. Each country should take on its shoulder how to manage this complex diplomacy. You have many, many scenarios. Of course, the great super scenarios is to avoid the worst case scenario, as we have mentioned earlier, and to build on and operationalize the good case scenario, which is cooperation, which is ceasefire, which is having unite all the factions towards building their country rather than exacerbating the conflict. And I think the map rooms many, many details, and the task is so enormous.
Yes.
And I think the Egyptian diplomacy, inshallah, would be very successful in getting into all these minute details and to make this harmonizing, what I call the scenario that Egypt now is seeking is the synchronizing scenario or the harmonizing scenario, which is very difficult effort. But I am sure that our country and our leadership will do its best to make it a success and to operationalize peace in this very lovely brotherly country.
Yes, Dr. Waguih, actually Egypt was always supporting and standing by Sudan in several situations. Like for example, when in the situation of the floods, Egypt before have supported Sudan and have sent all the what Sudanese need as a kind of support. There's a great and a very important bond historical one that links Egypt and Sudan as one nation. So give us an idea about this, please.
Yes, of course, Egypt and Sudan, they were one country during the
Yes.
reign of the King Farouk.
Yes.
And,
Big
in
Mina
Darfur,
also
I
long
met
ago,
some
yes.
people in Darfur. They still have statements and political slogans they keep as one country. So I think the deep rule, the root of the relationship between Egyptian and Sudanese are so enormous, so historical, and I think that we have to seek it back on the right track for the sake of the two countries and to avoid all this kind of sedition that some people try to cultivate for all of us.
Yes, and finally, my last question, Dr. Waguih, what could we expect from today's summit hosted by Cairo on Sudan and its neighboring countries? What do you expect or would be the outcome of the summit?
I think I wish all success to this summit, and I'm very optimistic about its results. We have seen a good picture yesterday when President Sisi is talking with Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia.
Yes, on
So
the
this means
sideline,
that,
yes.
the win-win approach should have the upper hand. Cooperation with Ethiopia, with all the countries, with all African countries. I think this is an enormous task that the Egyptian leadership is trying to operationalize for the last 5-6 years with great concerted efforts. And I think that gathering all the neighboring countries here and getting all the initiatives synchronized and harmonized is a very good start to say we can see success, and we wish success to the conference and to the great efforts being exerted for the sake of the Sudanese people first, and for everyone in the continent of the dear continent of Africa.
Yes, Dr. Waguih, I really had the honor to have this phone with you. Thank you very much for your valuable information, and thank you for being with us, Dr. Hassan Waguih, Professor of Political Science. Thank you very much for joining us over the phone. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break, and I'm going to be back with you.